I came home a little after midnight with sawdust in my hair and a duffel bag I'd packed 3 times and still didn't trust. The porch light was off. Claire never left the porch light off. She said a dark porch made a house look like nobody loved it, and she said that the way some people quote scripture, like it settled the matter. So when I came up the steps and the bulb wasn't burning, I stood there a second too long, key in my hand, listening to the cold tick of the radiator through the wall. Inside, the living room was dark except for the small lamp by the couch. The one she keeps on low because she says ceiling lights after 10 o'clock make a room feel like a dentist's office. Claire was asleep under it. She was curled on her side with her knees pulled up and one cheek pressed flat into the couch cushion, her hair fallen half across her face. There was a cold cup of tea on the floor by her hand. The TV was off. A paperback had slid down between the cushions. And she was wearing my jacket. Not a blanket. Not her own coat, which hung on the good hook by the door where it always did. My old brown work jacket, the canvas one. The one I had put in the donation box that very morning because I was leaving in 5 hours and didn't see the point in keeping a thing that wasn't coming with me. The box was still by the door. Flaps open. 2 sweaters and a stack of paperbacks inside. The jacket was not. She had taken it back out, put it on, and fallen asleep on the couch like she had crawled into something safer than a blanket. I set my duffel down quiet. The floorboard by the coffee table popped anyway. It always does. I've meant to fix it for 2 years. She stirred. "Claire," I said. Her eyes came open halfway. For a second she looked right at me without finding me, the way people do before they're all the way awake, before the part of them that guards the door has clocked in for the day. She pulled the jacket tighter around herself, tucked her chin down into the collar. Then she said, soft, almost into the canvas, "It still smells like you." I didn't say anything. I want to tell you the room went quiet, but it didn't. The fridge hummed. A car went by outside, tires hissing on a street that had thawed and refrozen all week. Upstairs, the old pipes knocked once and let go. Nothing in the world stopped. Something in me did. She blinked. I watched it land on her, the thing she'd said. Watched her wake up all the way and understand she'd said it out loud. To me, with no time to take it back. Her eyes came open the rest of the way and she sat up too fast, and the jacket swallowed her hands down to the knuckles. "I was cold," she said. I looked at the radiator. It was hissing like a kettle that forgot to whistle. "Sure," I said. "Don't say it like that." "Like what?" "Like you're being calm on purpose." "I am calm." "You're never calm by accident, Owen. That's Claire for you. Half asleep, caught out, wearing something she'd pulled out of a giveaway box, and still sharp enough to put a thumb right on the soft part of me." She started to peel the jacket off her shoulders. "You don't have to," I said. "I should. It's fine. It was in the box." She said it like an accusation, but her voice came apart a little at the end. "You were giving it away. It's old. So's half this house. It's worn out." "So are we," she said. And then she pressed her lips together like she hadn't meant to let that one out either. She folded the jacket over the arm of the couch, careful, the way you'd fold something that mattered and didn't want anyone to know it mattered, and she stood up. "I have to be at the school early," she said. "Subplans. Claire, get some sleep. You've got a long day." She went down the hall before I could decide what kind of man I was supposed to be next, and the door to her room clicked shut, and I stood in the dark living room with 5 hours left in the only home I'd had that felt like one. My name's Owen Keller. I was 35 that winter, living in the bottom half of an old duplex in South Minneapolis with bad windows, a furnace that ran like it held a grudge, and a roommate who had quietly become the most important person in my life while I was busy pretending I didn't need one. I worked backstage at the Waverly, an old brick theater downtown with red velvet seats gone thin at the arms and gold trim that flaked if you breathed on it. My job was hanging lights and patching sets and arguing with sound cable and knowing which stairwell leaked when it rained. It wasn't a job you bragged about. I liked it anyway. Theater people live in a state of almost disaster all the time, and I've always been steady around things that are about to go wrong. It's the things that are going right that I never knew what to do with. I was also, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a summer, a sergeant in the Army Reserve. I'd signed up at 19 for the money and stayed in out of habit, and the kind of loyalty you can't fully explain to people who've never stood in a formation in the cold and felt like they belonged to something. For 16 years, it had mostly meant drill weekends and a uniform in the closet and a second small paycheck. Then in January, the orders came down. My unit was activating. 9 months overseas, a support role, nothing the news would ever cover. I'd be gone before the snow melted and home, if the timeline held, before it fell again. Claire moved into the duplex 2 years before all that, about a year after Natalie left me. I wasn't looking for a roommate. I was looking for help with the rent. That sounds cold, but it's true. Natalie had taken the good couch and the matching plates and one sentence I've never been able to put down. "You're easy to live with, Owen," she said the last morning with a box under her arm. "But I don't think anybody actually gets to live with you." At the time, I thought that was unfair, mostly because it was exactly right. After she left, the place felt too big and too full of corners where I'd failed at something without ever raising my voice. I kept everything clean, paid the bills early, fixed the squeaky hinges, took the trash out before it turned, folded the towels, made the coffee. I became the kind of man nobody could complain about because I never gave anybody anything to point at. That isn't the same as being there. It just means you're tidy about being gone. Claire answered the room, listing through her sister's friend. She showed up on a gray Sunday in a red scarf with a notebook in her hand and stood in the middle of my living room looking at the walls like they'd disappointed her. "Do you own a vacuum?" she asked. "Yes, do you use it?" "Sometimes emotionally." She wrote something down. I asked if I was being graded. She said everybody is. She was 31 then, an art teacher at an elementary school over in the next neighborhood, with paint under her nails more often than not, and a habit of fixing up rooms when she didn't want to talk about whatever she was actually feeling. She had a dry voice and warm eyes, and the kind of face that looked like it was deciding whether to trust you and usually decided no. At first, she took the room. We made rules the first night, because that's what two careful adults do when they're scared of getting attached. Rent by the third. No dishes overnight. No passive-aggressive sticky notes. And one more, which was mine, nobody touches sentimental things without asking. She raised an eyebrow at that. Sentimental things. Old photos. Boxes. That kind of thing. Stuff that looks like junk but isn't. That's oddly specific. So is your rule about no bananas in the shared bowl. Bananas get into everything, she said, like that was obvious, and I decided right then I was going to like living with her. The jacket came with me out of the old life. It wasn't anything. Brown canvas, quilted lining gone flat, an inside pocket that ripped at the corner. One cuff stained darker from a coffee I spilled the first winter after Natalie and never fully got out. I bought it because all my nicer coats felt like they belonged to a man who still thought he was getting married. The jacket belonged to nobody. That's why I could stand to wear it. I wore it everywhere. To the theater, to the grocery store at 11 at night, out to shovel the walk, out to the curb to carry in the bags. And slow, the way these things go, it stopped being just my jacket and started being the house's jacket. If Claire ran out for the mail and didn't feel like digging out her coat, she grabbed mine off the hook. If she hauled the recycling to the alley in January, she wore it. The first time I saw her in it, I made the mistake of staring, and she said, "What?" And I said nothing, and she said, "You've got a face," and I said it was too big on her, and she said that was the whole point of an emergency coat. That's how it started. Closer, convenient, harmless. We leaned on those words like they'd hold our weight. In October, the pocket finally tore all the way, caught on a screw backstage while I was wrestling a painted door frame. I came home, threw the jacket over a chair, forgot about it. Next morning it was gone off the chair, and I found Claire at the kitchen table before school with it in her lap, sewing the pocket shut with a length of red thread. "Why red?" I asked. "It's what I had. It doesn't match anything. It's a repair," she said, not looking up. Not a disguise. She bit the thread off and held the pocket up. The stitches were crooked and they were strong. There, now it's got some character. It had character. Now it's got proof of it. She handed it back. I wore it to work that day and the next, and after a while that red thread was the first thing my hand found when I reached into the pocket without thinking. I didn't understand, not then, that she'd sewn a piece of herself onto a thing I put on every single day. Or maybe I understood fine and chose not to look at it straight, which is its own kind of not understanding. The morning I left, I was up at 4. I didn't sleep much. You don't. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark with a cup of coffee and the duffel by the door and the donation box beside it with its flaps still open like a thing that had been left mid-sentence. The jacket was folded over the arm of the couch where Claire had set it down. I picked it up to put it back in the box, because that was the plan, and the plan was the only thing keeping me moving. My hand found the pocket, the red thread, and something inside it, paper, soft at the folds like it had been there a while. I thought it was an old receipt. I pulled it out and unfolded it under the kitchen light. It was Claire's handwriting. 3 words. Not mine. And under that, smaller, like she'd pressed harder to make herself write it, still home. I sat down. Not gracefully. The way you sit when your knees stop being part of the arrangement. There was no date on it. It wasn't addressed to me. It didn't ask for one thing. That's what made it worse. If it had been a letter, I could have answered it. If it had been a confession, I could have panicked at it like a man. But it was just a private sentence she'd folded into the pocket of a coat she wasn't supposed to care about, written for nobody, true anyway. I thought about every time she'd worn it when I was gone. To the mailbox, the alley, the porch in a storm, wrapping herself up in it, not because she wanted my jacket, but because it was the closest version of me she could put her arms around without having to admit she wanted to. I read it twice more. Then I folded it exactly the way she'd folded it and put it back in the pocket, and I hung the jacket on the hook by the door. I did not put it in the box. I should have woken her up. I had 4 hours and the truth in my hands, and I should have walked down that hall and knocked and told her I'd found it, and that the answer to still home was yes, it was. She was. The whole time. That's what a brave man does. I'm not always a brave man. I'm a steady one. There's a difference, and it had cost me before, and I let it cost me again. Claire came out at 4:45 in a sweatshirt with her hair pushed back, eyes puffy, holding 2 mugs. She'd made the coffee. She handed me one without a word, and we stood in the kitchen and drank it. "You'll write," she said. Not a question, an instruction. I'll write. Real letters. Not just the once-a-month base internet thing. Real letters, because I'm not learning how to use whatever app the Army wants. I know. Outside, a car pulled up. Marcus, from my unit, headlights swinging across the front window. I picked up the duffel. Claire walked me to the door, and at the door she stopped, and I stopped, and for one long second neither of us said the thing. "I left the jacket on the hook," she said finally. "You can't have it. It's staying here." "Okay, somebody's got to keep the porch light on." "Okay, Claire." She hugged me then, fast and hard, her face turned into my shoulder so I couldn't see it, and she said into my coat, "Come home." And I said I would. And I went down the dark steps to the car, and I did not look back. Because if I'd looked back, I'd have stayed. And a man with orders doesn't get to stay. Overseas, I learned what the jacket had been for. It was for not feeling like this. I won't tell you much about where I was. It doesn't matter to this story, and most of it I'd rather not carry into a nice, quiet room. It was hot in a way Minnesota never taught me. The work was long and mostly boring, and occasionally not boring in a way that left your hands shaking after. I shared a space with 11 other men who snored. There was sand in everything. In my teeth, in the seams of my boots, in the one photo I kept, which was a bad photo Claire had taken of the 2 of us at the state fair where I'm looking the wrong way and she's laughing at me for it. And there were the letters. She wrote every week. Real ones, like she'd promised, in her teacher's handwriting that slanted hard to the right. She wrote about the kids, about a boy named Diego who ate a crayon and was fine, about the radiator finally giving out for good and the new landlord taking 3 weeks to fix it. She wrote about the weather like she knew I needed somewhere cold to put my mind. She wrote about going to get coffee on Saturday mornings, and once, near the bottom of a page, like it wasn't a big thing, she wrote, "I wear the jacket. Don't make it weird. It's the warmest thing in the closet and you're not here to give me a face about it. I read that line about 40 times. In the 4th month, a box came from her. The guys gathered around because everybody gathers around a box, and mostly it was the practical things: foot powder, beef jerky, a paperback she thought I'd hate, and I did. But down in the bottom, wrapped in a school napkin, was a single square of brown felt she'd cut to the size of a pocket flap, and on it she'd sewn one crooked red stitch. No note, no explanation. Beals asked me what it was. I told him it was nothing, just a patch, and I put it in my breast pocket where it stayed for the rest of the deployment, and I never told a soul that I knew exactly what it was. It was a piece of the jacket. It was her telling me, in the only language we'd ever let ourselves use, that the thread held on both ends. I wrote back about the food, which was a war crime, and the heat, and a sergeant named Beals who could fall asleep standing up. I wrote about the stars, because out there with no city under them, the stars came down close enough to scare you, and I thought she'd like that, the art teacher part of her. I did not write the thing I should have said at the door. I'd think about the note, not mine, still home, lying in that pocket on the hook back in the dark hallway. And I'd put my pen down and stare at the tent wall and tell myself I'd say it when I got back, when I could see her face. When I wasn't a voice on cheap paper she had to wait 3 weeks to hear. It's an easy thing to tell yourself, when I get back. It assumes a lot. It assumes she'll be standing where you left her. It assumes nobody walks through the door you left open. Somebody almost did. In the 5th month, 2 letters came on the same day. One was from Claire. The other was from Natalie. I hadn't heard from Natalie in 3 years. She'd found my mailing address through my sister, she said, and she hoped that was okay, and she'd been thinking about me, about us, about how she'd handled things, and she was in a different place now. And she didn't expect anything, but she wanted me to know that if I ever wanted to talk when I got home, the door wasn't closed. I read it twice and felt nothing I expected to feel. No flutter, no old pull. Just a kind of tiredness, like running into a town you used to live in and realizing you don't remember the streets. Natalie was the woman who'd told me nobody got to live with me, and she'd been right, and the proof of how right she'd been was that the second I read her name, all I could think about was a different woman, 3,000 miles away, asleep in my jacket on a couch. I almost didn't open Claire's letter. I don't know why. Some animal part of me afraid of what I'd find on the same day. She wrote about a spring concert at the school, about the new landlord wanting to raise the rent and her not knowing if she could swing the place alone, and a teacher friend named Renee who had a spare room in St. Paul if it came to that. And then near the end, light, glancing, the way she said everything that mattered most, there's a guy. A parent, actually, single dad, his daughter's in my afternoon class. He asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. I said maybe. I don't know. He's nice. It's been a long winter, Owen, and the house is quiet, and I'm tired of waiting for things I can't name. I sat on the edge of my cot with both letters in my hands, the closed door and the closing one. And I understood that I was about to lose her by being exactly the kind of man I'd always been. Careful, tidy, quiet, a man who keeps the truth folded up small and waits for a better time to say it, until somebody braver, somebody who can just say, "Do you want to get coffee?" without it costing them their whole chest, walks up and says it first. I didn't write Natalie back. I wrote Claire that night, and I got most of the way to the thing. I wrote that the house being quiet was my fault, that I'd left it quiet on purpose, that I'd had something to say at the door in February and hadn't said it because I'm a coward in the one specific way that matters. I wrote 3 pages, and then I looked at them, and I tore them up. Because it was a thing you say to a person's face, or you don't get to say it at all, and because I was scared that if I put it on paper and she'd already said yes to the coffee, the paper would just be a sad thing she had to feel bad about. So I wrote a short letter instead. I wrote, "Don't decide anything before I'm home. I'm asking you that as your friend, and I'm asking you that as something I don't have the right to say from here. Just wait 2 more months. Please, I'll explain everything." Oh, I mailed it, and I counted days like a man counts them, which is to say badly, getting it wrong every morning and starting over. They sent us home 11 days early. Nobody tells you why these things move. A rotation shifts. A flight opens up. And suddenly the 9 months you'd braced against all the way down to the marrow turns into 9 months minus 11 days. And you're on a plane, and then another plane, and then a bus. And then you're standing in the Minneapolis airport at 6 in the morning in a uniform that smells like 3 continents. And the cold comes through the doors when they open, and it's the best thing you've ever smelled. I didn't call ahead. I want to tell you that was romantic. It wasn't, all the way. Part of it was that I was afraid. If I called and she said, "Come over, there's something I have to tell you," in a careful voice, I didn't think I could survive the cab ride. So I just went home. The duplex looked the same. The porch light was on. 6 in the morning, gray, the snow gone to that tired March slush, and the porch light was burning like she'd left it on every night for 9 months just in case, which I would find out later she had. I let myself in. The living room was dark except for the lamp by the couch, and Claire was asleep under it, curled on her side, knees pulled up, one cheek pressed into the cushion, a cold cup of tea on the floor, and a paperback slid down between the seats. Exactly. The way I'd found her the night before I left, like the whole world had folded in half and pressed those 2 nights together. She was wearing the jacket. It was worse than I remembered and better than I deserved. 9 months of her wearing it had worn the cuffs nearly through. The collar had gone soft. The red thread on the pocket had frayed, and she'd gone over it again in a slightly different red. 2 repairs now, layered, like rings in a tree. I set my bag down. The floorboard popped. She stirred. Her eyes came open halfway, and she looked right at me without finding me. And then she found me. And I watched it happen in her whole body at once. The way you watch a building's lights come on floor by floor, she sat up so fast the book hit the floor, and her hand went to her mouth, and she said my name like it was a word she'd been saving. "Owen." "Hi. You're not," they said, "September. You're not supposed to be early flight," I said. My voice did something it doesn't usually do. Surprise, she got up off that couch and crossed the room and stopped about 2 feet short of me like there was a line on the floor she couldn't decide about, and she stood there in my worn-out jacket with her sleep-creased face and her eyes filling up. And she said, "You smell terrible." "I know. You smell like a bus station." 3 of them. I didn't get to she pressed her hand flat against her own chest like she was holding something in. I had a whole thing I was going to do. Subplans, I was going to take the day, I was going to Claire. What? I'd had 9 months and 3 torn-up letters and a bus ride to find the words, and standing there I found out I only needed the true ones. The small ones. The ones I should have said at the door. "I found the note," I said. She went very still. "In the pocket. The night before I left. Not mine. Still home. I found it, and I read it, and I knew, and I got on that bus anyway and didn't say a word to you, and I have hated myself for it on 3 continents. Her face came apart, slow, the way ice goes on a river, from the edges in. "You read it," she said. "I'm sorry. I didn't go looking. My hand just you knew. The whole time. You knew, and you let me sit here and write you letters about some single dad and his coffee, there's no coffee." She said it the same second I said, "Did you go?" And we both stopped. "I didn't go," she said. "I told him no. I told him no in February before I even mailed you that I wanted to see if it would make you say something. From over there. I wanted to make you jealous enough to be honest, which is a terrible thing to do to a man at war, and I knew it, and I did it anyway. And then I felt awful. And then your letter came that said, 'Wait.' And her voice gave out. She wiped her face hard with the heel of her hand, furious at it. I've been wearing this stupid jacket for 9 months, Owen. I wore it to the grocery store. I wore it to parent conferences. I wore it to bed when it got bad. I told everyone it was warm. It's not even warm, the lining's shot. I wore it because it was the closest I could get to tow home," I said. "Don't," she said. "Don't make it kind. I'm not making it anything. I'm just finally saying it." I took 1 step over whatever line was on the floor. Natalie wrote me. In the 5th month. Wanted to try again. "Open door," she said. Claire's chin lifted, bracing for it. "I didn't write her back," I said. I read her name, and the only thing in my whole head was you. 3,000 miles away, asleep in a jacket on a couch. She told me once that nobody gets to live with me. And she was right, Claire. She was right about the man I was. But somewhere in 2 years of you leaving me notes that say contains vegetables, be brave, and sewing my pockets shut with the wrong color thread and keeping the porch light on, somebody got to live with me. You did. You're the first place I ever wanted to come home to. I should have said it at the door. I'm saying it now. She stood there in the wrecked jacket with the tears just running, not bothering to fight them anymore, and she said in a small, wrung-out voice, I wasn't cold. That night. You knew I wasn't cold. I knew. I was saying goodbye to you and I didn't have the guts to do it with my eyes open. I know. And now you're home and you smell like a bus station, and I've been awake since 4 and I don't have a single thing prepared to say. You don't need a thing prepared, I said. Just tell me the truth. You've got it written down somewhere already. She let out a sound that was half a laugh and half the other thing, and she closed the last of the distance. And she put her face into my filthy uniform the same way she had 9 months before, except this time she didn't say come home, because I was home, and there was nowhere left to send me. We didn't rush it after that. People are always a little disappointed when I tell them that. They want the homecoming and the music swelling and the whole 9 months of waiting paid off that morning on the living room floor. But we'd both spent our whole lives being careful, and you don't undo careful in an afternoon, and honestly, we didn't want to. We'd watched the rushed version not work, both of us. We wanted the slow one. The new landlord raised the rent and we let the duplex go in May, and we found a place together near the creek with 2 bedrooms on opposite sides of the hall and a kitchen the color of a marigold porch, which is a real paint color. Claire showed me the can. Co-tenants, the lease said. It was a small word for a large thing, and we both knew it, and we signed it slow. The jacket hangs by the new door. Second hook from the left. Not the good hook. I asked her about that once, why she didn't give it the good hook by the radiator where the coats actually dry. The good hook's for wet things, she said. Things that are coming and going. This hook's for things that are staying. It took us a while to get to the rest of it. That's our business, and I'll keep it. But there was a morning, a plain one, late spring, the heat in the building out again, and Claire was leaving for school with the jacket pulled over her shoulders, one hand on the doorknob, and she turned around. What? I said. I was making coffee. She looked at me a long second. Then she said, It doesn't smell like just you anymore. I put the pot down. No? No, what's it smell like? She looked down at the worn-through cuffs, the doubled red thread. Coffee, theater dust. My lavender soap, because you still use way too much of the unscented stuff like a man afraid of joy. Spring, toast, she paused. And home. I crossed the kitchen. She didn't move except to tip her face up. Can I tell you something? She said. That I should have put on a better piece of paper than the back of a grocery receipt? You can tell me anything. It was never the jacket, she said. I want you to know that. I'd have waited for you in a paper bag. It was just the only honest thing in the house I could put my arms around while I worked up the nerve to put them around you. I still have the note. It's folded into the same pocket, soft now, almost worn through at the creases. Claire says I should frame it. I tell her some things belong in pockets. She says that's either romantic or it's me being avoidant in a new outfit, and I tell her both can be true, which is the closest thing to wisdom I've earned. Most nights the jacket just hangs there on the second hook. Some mornings she wears it down to the corner for coffee and comes back with 2 cups and her hair wrecked from the wind and the cuffs covering half her hands, the exact way they did the first night I found her asleep in it, when she said the thing before her pride could stop her. She was wrong, in the end, about what it smelled like. It doesn't smell like just me, not for a long time now. It smells like sawdust and tempera paint, like black coffee and lavender soap, like cold air off the creek and toast in a yellow kitchen. It smells like the life we almost folded up and gave away. It smells like us. Share.